Like elsewhere, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the Gambia journalism industry, especially freelancers, many of whom were laid off due to the reduction in advertisement revenues by the local newspapers they work for. Some of the freelance journalists affected by the pandemic share their experiences with Kerr Fatou. Janke Toure, a freelance journalist, says COVID-19 was one of the biggest challenges in her life as she quit many media houses because she found it difficult to sell her stories.
The COVID has been the biggest challenge of my life recently because it has gone to an extent I quit a lot of places. I wasn't able to sell out my stories. We were not able to get stories from people. Many institutions were closed, and even the market was not going that well. For you to go and have an interview with someone, he or she will tell you if you have done the vaccine or if you have sanitized your, but others will even drive you out and say it is COVID. You shouldn't grant. I would not grant your interview.
Dauda Balde, also a freelance journalist, had this to say.
It was really a very difficult moment from the start of the pandemic. As you can see, being a freelance journalist in this country is really hard, and also a student journalist. At a time when I spend my money to go on for coverages, and sometimes if you go on for coverages as a freelance journalist, the challenges are just high. They will buy your story at a cheaper price. Considering the fact that the quality of the story, sometimes many media houses, they don't consider that they have their own price tag. They will tell you that, well, I bought a story from Freelance that's $200. Some will tell you $150. And at the start of the pandemic, things were very tough.
Meanwhile, Aji Musumane Fai, another freelance journalist, says it was difficult for her to find a story to write when the social distancing was imposed to curb the spread of the virus.
One of the ways that it has done or impacted in our life negatively, or we can say that do not favor us, is when the time or at a time there was no coverages, enough coverages around. So, and as a freelancer, you depend on the number of stories that you get to have your money back. So at that time there was no enough stories. Freedom of expression was limited, and freedom of movement was limited. Freedom of association was also limited. So in all these limitations, it affects us greatly.
Research has it that more than a third of journalists change their journalistic specialization to focus on covering the news of the COVID-19 pandemic and preparing reports on its effects. And the vast majority of the respondents said the pandemic has caused a decline in levels of press freedom. Reporting for Kerr Fatou, I am Landin Cisse.